You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. Tuesday morning, I get a text message from James Fox, Future Sox, SI. I believe we were the first podcast he ever was on, like 2.5 years ago. Good friend of the show, and Ed, it was a message of apology because he went on another podcast. And I was like, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Then I sat in the corner and cried for 2 hours, but I'm over it now. I have a guest today that no other podcast gets. He is exclusive to Sox in the Basement. We'll talk about him in moments. How was the holidays, my friend?
The holidays were good up until, I would say, yesterday.
Really?
2 days ago.
Why?
Yeah, because then I started watching a real team that has real World Series aspirations start making moves that my White Sox seem to be unwilling or unable to make.
Oh, we're going to get into that. Another thing that James asked me was like, he asked something about you. He's like, Ed sounds pretty good. Is he permanent? I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's permanent at this point. He was like, awesome. So you got a fan out there on Sox in the Basement, brought to you proudly by Family Waterproofing Solutions. Folks, if you have any issues in your basement, foundational issues, the sump pump, you're not sure if it's going to last in the spring, remember, after the snow melts, basements flood. They got a free estimate anytime that you're ready, and they got money off if you mention Sox in the Basement. The phone number is right there on the logo for Sox in the Basement on whatever podcast player that you are using, or if you are at soxinthebasement.com, the website there as well, famws.com. The guest today, Ed, is a once-a-year treat. We normally do it for his birthday. He turned 70 this year, and we could not do it because of COVID lockdowns, but now we've all been in the bubble together. We're like the NBA without skipping out of the bubble and pretending that we're actually still in the bubble. That's what we're doing in the Lanuti household. And my father, Ed Lanuti, 70 years old, sitting at the 9-foot homemade oak bar, his annual trek down here to talk White Sox. Dad, how are you?
I'm good. I came down here to talk White Sox and drink at this bar.
Yeah, the trick with this whole show is going to be that there's two Eds, and then you and I have similar voices. So good luck to everybody for the next 30 minutes. All right.
Well, and I get to say, as I sometimes do, that two Eds are better than one, so you're all in for a real treat.
You wrote an article, buddy. I thought it was great. It's up at soxinthebasement.com, and first you stole a famous poem, but you made it enjoyable. It was very funny. I got it. And then you kind of went through best case, worst case, and most likely scenarios for a lot of things with the White Sox. Give everybody a quick rundown before we dive into things today.
I did a 'Twas the Night Before Christmas remix, if you will, towards Rick Hahn. At least 'twas a couple days after Christmas anyhow. And then the best and worst case scenario and the likely scenario, I'm doing a two-parter. So you got this week, I recap some of the key stuff that happened in 2020. And the next week, I'm going to predict a little bit into 2021, some of the things that we are looking forward to happening and how those things are going to play out. So every week, I will put something up on the Sox in the Basement blog, the Mismatched Sox blog, and I hope everybody enjoys and gets something out of it. The other thing I delved into this week was I did a little reaction to the Blake Snell and now Yu Darvish trades for the Padres, which doesn't seem like it's appropriate for a Sox blog, but when you're sitting here waiting for your GM to do something and you watch another team do something, I feel like you kind of have to say something.
But I don't get the outrage over it. And Dad, jump in anytime that you hear something here. Feel free. Look, they're not in my league. They have decided they're going for it. Like they cleaned out their prospect list. They're gone. It's Mackenzie Gore and like a bag of balls. That's all that's left in the Padres system at this point. I mean, they pretty much have cleaned everything out. And they did it because, first of all, they have a new ownership group, or they have like a turnover in the ownership. A new person's basically got the majority over there. And you've got a GM that's like, I better win before they pick their own guy. And maybe he's got a mandate like, we want to win now. You don't know what's going on over there, but they basically cleaned house, brought in a lot of payroll. I mean, Snell and Darvish still have money that's owed to them, and got rid of an awful lot of prospects and signaled, we intend to compete with the Dodgers and we intend to win a championship. They also have started the clock on their window, because guess what? When you get rid of all your prospects, your rebuild will eventually end like it's ending for the Cubs this week. So they're going for it, but it will end at some point.
They're definitely in a win now mode. And don't get me wrong, I'm not outraged when what I'm doing is for people who are outraged at this and think the Sox should have gone out and got Blake Snell. Well, what I did was I kind of looked at it, and a number of other places have looked at it too, and I would suggest that people read up on this, because if you look at what they gave up for Blake Snell, you're right. They gave up a lot to get him, and there's a lot of things that the Sox don't have in terms of bullets in their gun to make a trade like that the Padres did. So good for the Padres if they were able to get Blake Snell. I don't know what the Cubs were doing with that Yu Darvish trade. I think everybody who's looked at it, I was reading a couple of recaps of it, and basically they got a bunch of teenagers and a bunch of guys that are maybe going to pan out, and then they got Zach Davies, which congratulations on that hot Zach Davies action, Cubs. You're going to really enjoy a guy who throws a changeup 40% of the time and will probably get you a bunch of innings, if not anything else.
Yeah, it was an ugly trade. I think if the White Sox aren't in Chicago, they beat that Padres trade. But
100%.
Any deal with the Cubs, you're going to have to overspend, because the Cubs can't look bad after the last deal with the White Sox. Here's a question, Dad. You're 70 years old, glorious 70 at this point. You're clearly in the at-risk category. You could drop on me at any moment. All right? So you're 8 years.
Way to set him up with a nice,
he's a lot of fun, ain't he?
Good feel, yeah.
Yeah.
Here, before you're dead, answer this question, please.
He's getting a vaccine well before the rest of us, okay? So
right.
So here's the deal. You're 8 years old because your birthday's at the end of the year. You're 8 years old when the White Sox go to the World Series in 1959. You have to wait until you're 54 years old for the next time they go and finally win a World Series, and that's it. Would you rather be the kind of team that builds for this long-term sustainable winning thing that Rick Hahn keeps saying that he's going to have, which is why he seems to not want to empty his bank of prospects and go for it, but you don't know if you're going to win a World Series, or at your very late stage in your life, would you prefer that the White Sox sell everything and win now?
I think the White Sox are, I think they're going the right way here. They've got a lot of good players. They don't have enough pitching. I think they're sitting back and see, what does Dylan Cease do? Is he just going to be a teaser like Garland, have 3 good innings and blow up and then and lose the game in the 4th or 5th inning every day?
Which is what John Garland was until he had that really good year.
He had one good year.
And they won the World Series in that one good year.
And he went to the next team he went to, the Angels, I think, and he did the same thing there. Yeah, I mean, where are you at right now? We were just talking about this before we came in the air. What are the White Sox doing? I don't think they want to spend all this money or go with their prospects yet. I think they just want to see if these guys are for real for a full season.
Yeah, I don't think Hahn looks at his team the same way that the Padres are looking at their team. They're saying we can win the World Series this year. The White Sox are a contender and are a stronger contender if they make moves. But I'm starting to believe that the White Sox also are like, let's see how we do in a full season with these guys before I really know where the holes are in this team. And I also want to see what happens with the CBA and how everything goes here before I start putting all my cards on the table in 2022. You're selling it's our time now, but deep down, I don't know if they believe that it's their time now, right now. Sox in the Basement listeners, do the hard work. And if you're a hardworking man or woman on the South Side, you need to be outfitted properly. And that's why you should visit Red Wing Shoes in Evergreen Park, New Lenox, and Geneva. A work boots specialty store that carries sizes from 6 to 16 and feet as wide as 4E. A 115-year-old company that came out of Red Wing, Minnesota. And one of its largest stores in the entire Midwest is in Evergreen Park, Illinois, ever since 1976. When you're on your feet, the footwear is everything. So why not get an expert fitting? They warranty, repair, and offer free conditioning with laces. And they also carry Carhartt work clothing as well. Located at 3347 West 95th Street in Evergreen Park, Illinois, at 208 East Maple Street on Route 30 in New Lenox, or at 1749 South Randall Road in Geneva. Visit them today. You work hard. You've earned it. Red Wing Shoes. Did you know my father had a tryout with the Kansas City Royals?
Oh, please.
I did not know that.
He had a tryout with the Kansas City Royals.
Yeah, that was a great
Tell us, I want to hear this story.
Well,
my father had a tryout with the Kansas City Royals.
I was out with my cousin Tim one night having a libation, and at 1 a.m, he said, there's a tryout tomorrow for the Kansas City Royals.
And this is in Chicago. The
In
Royals
Chicago.
were
They were
going
to do a tryout down on 39th Street down there. I can't remember the name of the park.
What year about is this?
Oh, this had to be early 71, maybe.
One of you guys are rocking one of those 70s stashes. You got the short shorts on?
So we went out. So we decided, why don't we go, let's try out. So we got to put our cutoff shorts on and our tennis shoes.
Nice.
We were hungover. We went down there. And all these people are in uniforms, and they had some deal if you like they send you to college, and they didn't really tell us to do much. Why you guys go out in the outfield and shag some flies for us?
You're telling me they didn't take you seriously?
Nah, they didn't take us seriously. So we said, that's it. So we went to the bar, and a couple guys came in, and I said, that's why Kansas City will be a second division club forever. They didn't sign us.
Right. And from that point forward, I mean, look what happened to the Royals.
Yeah.
Not much.
They actually
Not
got
much.
good.
No, it's been George Brett in one good year.
They just
right?
got good.
Yeah, you were almost on that team with George Brett. Like you were that close to him.
Well, he played third. I was going to try out for third, so it probably wouldn't have worked for him.
See, yeah, you would have been blocked from really making an impact, and it's understandable. You'd want to go to a different organization, though.
Yeah.
So.
Can you imagine there'd be like that one fan going, man, they're blocking this Lanuti with this Brett guy.
And if it wasn't the early 70s and then it was 2020, that guy would have a podcast and he'd be sitting there going, you got to get rid of this guy and you got to let Lanuti come up and you got to let him take over. He's the future.
They'd be breaking down his analytics and his launch angle from 16-inch softball up at Grant Park. Like that's.
Yeah, at least I can always tell everybody I tried out for a Major League Baseball club.
You tried out for a Major League Baseball
go.
club. Good for you. Okay, so we're seeing the Cubs get torn down this week with Darvish leading, and already it sounds like Contreras is the next guy on the block. And, of course, they're going to probably shop Bryant. I don't think there's a market yet for him, but there will be at the end. And they're going to tear their thing down. And I see a lot of White Sox fans rejoicing over it. And look, I enjoy Cubs plight just like every other Southsider. But they did do a rebuild that resulted in a World Series. And we haven't gotten to that yet in this rebuild. And if we don't get what they got, at minimum, it's a complete failure. So I'm all for let's make our window as wide open as possible. But at some point, you got to go for it because they went for it. I felt like their biggest mistake, and somebody here correct me if I'm wrong, their biggest mistake was not when they threw all their cards in to go win in 2016. Their biggest mistake was, imagine this team if they don't overpay for Jose Quintana because they're trying to win a World Series right away again the next year or 2 years afterwards. Because let's think about this. Like, nobody really wins World Series in bunches, and back-to-back is incredibly hard. Your pitchers go much further into the season. They get an extra month or so on their arm. There's all this extra stuff. Remember when Burley came out? I mean, just for White Sox fans in 06, he was like dead arm at the beginning of 06. Contreras was like dead arm. Like all these guys were like, everybody was like just worn out from the long off season and the deep run into the postseason the year before to win the World Series. The Cubs, imagine them if they were able to sit there and say, yeah, we can't afford this guy, but we can retool, and we've got Eloy Jimenez locked in, and we've got Dylan Cease here in the rotation. There wouldn't be as much, like, they wouldn't be so down their fan base. So that's my biggest fear as a White Sox fan, is that I want to push in my cards at the right time, but I also don't want us to get greedy. They got greedy. Their window might have stayed open a little bit longer if they wouldn't have gotten so greedy. Am I right or am I wrong?
No, I think that's a pretty accurate statement. I think a lot of people would look at the past couple of years when they picked up Kimbrel, and he's been awful, and
he was already awful when they picked him up too. They like believed in this guy, and he was already a bad player.
Yeah, he was already on the downslide. The trade though, where they sent Jimenez and Cease over here for Quintana, was an overpay, which, thanks, Cubs. I think everybody would agree that thank you to the Northsiders for overpaying for a guy who really, if you look at Quintana's career numbers, not an ace. Very, very good, very reliable pitcher. Not going to win them a World Series. We're talking about bringing him back as maybe a fourth or fifth starter. I mean, that's, you're not sitting there going, we're reunited with our number one. I think you see things like that, but that's not the only trade that they made like that. They traded away other guys for rentals. They traded away, they were never able to develop pitchers behind any of these free agents, Lester that they signed. So there's nothing there's nothing in their minor league system. There's nothing coming up to replace a free agent bust or a guy that's just a rental that they don't want to re-sign because he's too expensive. So I think they did a good job rebuilding and getting that core group that they're now starting to tear apart. But their entire basis around it, which to your point earlier about Rick Hahn not throwing in all of his chips at the wrong time, their idea was we're just going to keep dumping money into this team until we find somebody from some other organization that can do this. And it led to, we're not going to pay Jake Arrieta. We're going to turn around and we're going to overpay Yu Darvish, who now has a huge contract and for the first year or so didn't live up to it because he was hurt. And they made mistakes like that over and over again. But I think you got as good a point as any at which their window started to fall shut.
Oh, yeah, and it closed earlier, and I think that they wanted it to. Dad, in 70 years, and I'm going to keep bringing up how old you are throughout the entire show, in 70 years of being a White Sox fan, can you think back to a time where the Sox were a good team going into an offseason where you felt like there was a piece or two where they were away from being a big-time team and they missed out on somebody?
There were a couple times, 67 White Sox were a really good team. They were in first place the entire. That was the last time it was there was just an American League and National League. And that team was in first place until the last weekend. And the Red Sox passed them, but they had no hitters. So what they do is they go out and they trade some people away and they get Tommy Davis from the Dodgers. He was a big hitter. I think he had 2 hits in the first 2 months, and the team just slid away, and everybody thought, oh, what the heck. And then the same thing happens. Another one was 84. The 83 White Sox were so good, and 84 they go out and they get, what's his name, Seaver. They get Tom Seaver.
Right.
They join him in that pitching, and they had a really good.
And you're thinking to yourself, like, look how good we were last year. Now we just got Tom Seaver,
and we're just going to blast.
Right.
We're going to win this thing. But
exactly.
No, and they were terrible again. Well, they weren't terrible, but they had no chance. And so, yeah, right now I sit here and I go, what happens is we made the playoffs. We didn't win this division with this team.
We would have made the playoffs under the regular rules from the year before. Right. But, yeah, you're right. We didn't win the division.
So we get in the playoffs, and now what do we do? We added a couple pitchers. We added some little help. We need some help in the bullpen, and we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't get, so I don't go crazy.
You see, you're not crazy about this because you're like, look, put your team together, but anything can happen between the beginning of the season and midway through the season and the end of the season. You could be great on paper and fall apart. You could be a team that you told me, I want to say it was February or March of 2005, we're going to be the best fourth place team in baseball.
Yes, I did.
That's what you told me in 2005.
And I tell you something, too.
The best fourth place team in baseball. That was the expectations of the 05 team.
And you know what? And I wasn't the only guy.
I believe that.
I was one of the guys I was talking to all the time. He worked for the White Sox, and I knew him real well. And he came back from spring training, and I said, how's that team look? He says, we got a bunch of 250 hitters. I don't know what this team's going to be. And they won the World Series. So, sometimes you can make, if your team evolves, come March, May, April, you start by June, you figure out what you got, and you can kind of put your team together. Then that trade at the around the All-Star break, that's the one that you can really help yourself. I mean, the White Sox in '67, they had a chance to get Ken Harrelson. All right.
Back when it was more about his hitting and less about his talking.
Right. He was a good player, and the Sox couldn't get a hit. They were hitless wonders. If they scored 3 runs, they won a game. There was no way nobody beat them if they scored 3 runs. And all they needed was a damn hitter, and they wouldn't trade anything or spend any money to go get Ken Harrelson, and he was out there. So what happens? The Red Sox pick them up, and they end up winning the pennant and go to the World Series. Now,
so what you're telling me is that the White Sox were cheap and made bad moves well before Jerry Reinsdorf.
For a long time.
It's just a long line of cheap owners.
Hey, honey, what's this?
Village Batch, handcrafted Greek goods. 3 brothers, Southside born, diehard White Sox fans, and they sent us a box of goodies.
Ooh, what's that?
Organic extra virgin olive oil.
Oh, what's that over there?
Raw organic honey. There's also balsamic vinegar, olives, sea salt flakes, organic dried herbs you can use in any of your recipes. These guys are great. All of their products are sourced directly from small-scale family farms in the Arcadia region of Greece. They pay a premium for the crop, package, import, and self-distribute the products. And by doing that, they get a very fresh, premium product without breaking the bank. And you're gonna love the olive oil. They don't filter it. That means more flavor. That means it has more health benefits.
This sounds great. Where do we get more?
They're at Pete's Fresh Market, Mariano's, over at County Fair Foods on Western. Now get 25% off all online orders using the promo code BASEMENT at villagebatch.com. Now, you brought up 83, and I think this is a great segue, Ed, because you and I could sit there and talk about Tony La Russa, but we were kids, right? I mean, Tony La Russa was the manager.
We don't have...
manager of our childhood, right? And I find it interesting. There was a group of people who didn't even have Tony La Russa as a manager in any period of their lives, who are the younger White Sox fans. And my father was like Tony's age, or possibly older than Tony when Tony got in there. I don't know. No, he's 77. So you're 7 years younger than him, but
Right.
you're in the same ballpark. Like if you ran into in a bar, you might have a beer with a Tony La Russa.
I'm sure we would.
Just make sure he doesn't drive home now.
Right, exactly. I'm pretty sure Tony would have a beer with you.
Yeah,
don't you,
sure.
Tony? Right. And you'd be like, and at that time you'd be like, I'm a police officer, and he'd be like, I might need your card. Like that's kind of how that would work. Okay, so anyway, tell me your impressions on the Tony La Russa hire, and also what you remember good and bad about Tony La Russa the first time around with the White Sox.
Well, when they hired him, I was a little set back. I thought he was kind of getting up there maybe, and he wouldn't want to do this anymore. But as a manager, when he was to the White Sox, he was a pretty good manager. I mean, he had a little fire in his belly, and I don't know if he still has that, but I mean, he was a good manager, handled pitchers well. I mean, he was one of those guys that pushed the fifth starter. People were only going with 4 starters. He was one of those guys that said he went to a 5th starter, hit 5-man rotation.
So Tony La Russa is one of the pioneers of the 5-man rotation.
Yes, and he was a good.
Because people tell me he can't think outside of the box.
No. He's a good manager.
No.
And I tell you what though, and he was quiet for the most part, but he could get fired up. And if he got fired up, boy, he was funny. I remember they played a game against the Baltimore Orioles in '83 before this wasn't the playoff series, and there was a play at third. And the umpire called the guy out. He was obviously safe. And that fight went on for about 5 minutes. He's kicking dirt. Then he takes third base out and throws it into the stands.
Yeah.
I
like managers
as
like
he walks
this.
off the field.
Right.
And everybody thought he was kind of laid back, but no, he can get fired up. And the other thing is, if players dogged it, he was one of those managers that when they came off the field, the guy did not go back on the field. All right, if he thought a guy was dogging it, he took him out of the game.
Guy.
So I got a feeling, everybody says he's 78 years old, but he's still going to be old school. I think he's not dead, and so he's going to sit there and he's going to tell them, this is what I want, and I think his actions will speak louder than words with him. If you don't do what you want to do, you'll find yourself on the bench, I think.
Let's talk about something else, though, that I can follow up on that. So also around the same time that Tony La Russa is managing the White Sox and he's a young manager, there were a lot of managers in Major League Baseball that were old guys. Like Sparky Anderson, as a child, looked to me that he might have been 104 while he was managing the Tigers there towards the end. I don't know if that's his real age, but as a child, he looked at least 103, maybe 104. The old managers used to be the thing.
Yeah, there were a lot of old managers. I mean, he's not the first guy. I bet there's a lot of guys that managed in the their 70s.
Right. Like your managerial career could still be right around the corner, is what you're telling me.
I can't try out for the team anymore. I'll tell you that.
That window is closed.
Yeah, but you know what? I hear the tryouts are a little less physical for manager.
Just got to get home after a night out.
Yeah, after dinner with your friends, you just got to get home.
I always love the managers that can't fit in a uniform. Those are my favorite managers.
Oh, a Tommy Lasorda?
Oh,
Yeah, they gotta wear like a pullover jacket or something to go out there.
Didn't La Russa, like I remember he liked to wear the jacket all the time,
Yes,
right? But didn't he sometimes just wear the jacket, no shirt? Like I seem to remember there were a couple of games in the summer where Tony used to just rock the old school White Sox jacket with it zipped halfway down to show off his fine Italian chest hairs. Like I remember that vividly as a child.
I don't.
You may be thinking of somebody completely different, Chris.
Give me the guys that you enjoy watching the most and maybe remind you of a player in the past that we would be like, oh, that's pretty good. It'd be kind of a fun comparison. Like, or is there just a player that you look at and you go, wow, that guy's good? Like, I always tell the story that we're sitting at the ballpark, Ed, and my father looks at me. We used to go all. He told me this when I got older. He got season tickets so he could have conversations with his son in his teenage years. He's like, you wouldn't tell me anything that was going on with you. I'd take you to a ball game. You would spill your guts about everything. I'd buy you some nachos. I'd get you a few hot dogs. I know everything going on in your life. This is why I had partial season tickets in the outfield. Okay?
Smart man.
That's what he did. That's how he's like, you got to get you out of the house and get you sitting down. And I have a beer. And then you're like, I'm sitting with my father at a game. You tell me everything that's going on. So he's like, that was what we used to do. And I also remember, though, that he looked at me one time. Frank Thomas was up, brand new, gets a 2-strike, an 0-2 count, hits a laser into the outfield. And my father goes, I haven't seen anybody hit a ball like that since Ted Williams. You got his baseball card? And I go, yeah. And he goes, hold on to that. He's going to be really good. And that was when he was brand new. Okay. He's like, that is a completely different kind of player. Does anybody jump out at you right now?
Oh, me? I tell you what, a guy I think is really good is Jimenez.
Over Robert.
Oh,
because everybody's all like gaga over Robert.
No, I think Jimenez reminds me of the guy who enjoys going up in the 7th, 8th, 9th inning with 2 men on base and 2 outs against a really good pitcher. He enjoys it. You can see it in his face.
He's like a Reggie Jackson.
Yeah, I think he could become a really good clutch hitter. I remember Lou Piniella. Lou Piniella played in the Yankees, and they had really good players. And Lou Piniella was the right fielder, I think, and he was hitting about 260, 270. But boy, in the 8th inning, if you had Lou Piniella come up, he got a hit every time. He was a pain in the ass.
Just elevated his game.
He elevated his game, and I think I see that with Timmy Anderson too. Timmy Anderson's another guy that likes to hit when in big moments.
You like the swag, don't you? Like a lot of people think the older people don't like the swag.
No,
You're digging the Timmy Anderson swag, the flips, the talk. You like that stuff.
I like that. Yeah, I do. I like it. I like a guy who's you can see it in their face. They're confident hitters when they walk up to the plate, and they're not worried about anything. And some of these guys. Yeah, they're good players, but when they get in the 8th inning, 9th inning, they're not that great clutch hitter. But I see Jimenez as the kind of guy that I thought when he got hurt in that game against Oakland, I said we're done because he would have got 2 more chances to bat, and they couldn't get him out. He
would have gotten 2 more hits.
He would have got 2 more hits.
Driven in several more runs, and we would have won that game.
He would have won that game for that.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that gets lost on it because everybody thinks about the pitching. Who cares about the pitching? Eloy Jimenez, if he would have been healthy in that game, White Sox win that game.
Win that game.
I think you're right about that. Yeah. I agree with you on that one.
I get the same feeling watching Jimenez come up as, in, say, 05 and 06 when Jermaine Dye would come to the plate. Like, didn't you feel like when Dye would come up, like, all right, he's locked in, he's paying attention, he's not going to swing a crap, he might not get the hit.
He brought up Jermaine Dye in 05, but I want to close with this one. I want to close with the Joe Creedy story.
Oh,
because the interesting perspective. Now, remember, the White Sox have blown it in August of 05. They're falling apart in September. The Indians have pulled within, I don't know, a game somewhere in there, half game. I think it's a half game.
There were 2 plays in that game.
They're right there.
Right behind.
And this guy goes to the big pivotal game, Sox Indians.
Yeah, the Sox Indian game. There were 2 big plays. The first one was. What's Coco Crisp? As his name was.
Yeah, Coco Crisp.
Coco Crisp,
named after the cereal.
He's up the bat.
His dad was a big fan.
And they got a man on. The Indians have a man on third. There's 2 outs, and he hits a slow ground ball into the hole at short. And Coco Crisp, he runs like the wind.
He could run.
And Juan Uribe, he goes over there, and I put my head down. I go, son of a bitch, we're going to lose this game. And he throws him out. It was like a cannon going across that field. And then the next,
he could flat-footed throw on anybody.
Yeah, he threw him out by a step. And the next inning, Creedy comes up to bat, and we were sitting down low, and we were sitting down behind home plate down low. He comes up to bat, and
he gives Joe Creedy a pep talk.
I start yelling at him.
He starts telling Joe,
you're the man. Joe, you're the man. He looks over at me. He gets in the batter's box, hits a home run, and win the game.
Yeah. He made eye contact with Joe.
So there you go.
Told Joe Creedy he was the man. Joe Creedy walks it off. Dad did that.
I don't think I did it.
Dad did it. Take credit, Dad.
There was a clutch hitter right there.
Take credit, Dad.
There was a clutch hitter.
I take credit for the fact that when Ozzie Guillen was saying, send me a lineup, I sent him the lineup that he used. I sent that exact lineup that he went to. Okay, he puts Dye in the 3 spot. I mean, I sent that entire lineup to him. He switched his lineup. They went on that ridiculous run. They went 11-1 in the postseason. I sent it to him for my Hotmail account. I take full credit. I'm still waiting for my ring. All right.
I take full credit for any weight loss that former Royals catcher Sal Fasano has undergone because I called him Fat Sano from the stands for about 7 innings one game.
Socks in the basement. Socks in the basement. Socks in the basement.
Socks in the Basement. Heard everywhere a podcast can be found, and always on socksinthebasement.com.